Welcome to the Thursday, February 16th, 2017 meeting of the Monomoy School Committee. I'll call the meeting to order at 6:05. And I'm going to take the agenda slightly out of order here and open it up now for public comment. Is there anybody who's here to speak to the school committee tonight?
Thank you.
Yes, I have to.
So right now, she's just handing out a copy of a petition that the girls and boys basketball team put together on the topic of retiring Jordan Fisher's jersey and putting it in. Sorry, I'm Kira Foster. It's just the petition to retire his jersey and put it up in the gym. Basically, Jordan was a friend to many and a very big supporter of our basketball teams, and he was at every single one of our home games, even some of our away games, the ones he could make it to. He was always there, and it was very important to us to look up in the stands and always see that he was like cheering for us. Having him and his memory in the gym is the same thing. It's Jordan. That's just what we need. We want to look up and be able to see him as a memory, as a friend, everything. It's just so important. And both in sports and just when you walk into the school, he's a part of our community. And this building is a community building, so he should be represented in our community building. He should be represented in our community teams. He should be represented in our community schools because he's a part of this community.
Also,
What's your name?
I'm Alexis Roma,
Thank you.
and we went to Falmouth in a away game recently and saw that they had a banner that said, one community, one family, not one school, one family. Like, as a community, I think we should all get together and support the fact that, this happened. Like, this was a tragic thing that happened. It's already tragic. Like, putting his jersey up there isn't gonna make anything worse. The only thing that's been helping us all get through this is like working together and keeping his spirit alive. Like, this is the best way to keep his spirit alive, and I think if you guys can help with grieving, I just don't see why you couldn't do that. So, and if you can retire the jersey, like, I don't understand how hanging it wouldn't be part of that, Like, we're the ones here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, like, we're the people that we're very traumatized by this. Seeing the jersey up there will not make it worse. That'll only help. And it'll keep people still talking about him. Like, that's where they will see him in the gym.
It doesn't bring, it's there so we can look up and we can remember the smiles, his skills, his support, just everything about, it's not about what happened, it's about him. That's what needs to be understood here. It's about us looking up and seeing him. It's not about the trauma. That's already a tragedy. That's already something that happened. You're not bringing tragedy in. We're just trying to just remember him as much as we can and just put him in a place where you have people that know him, people who've known him his whole life, and then also people who are just visiting our school. They look up and they see a wonderful young man who was a star athlete, and everyone loved him. That's important. That's what you want to see when you come. When you come to a school, you want to see a school that cares about the people, the community because we're all part of the community that comes to a school. You want to see that the school and the community cares about each other. That's what it shows. It shows memory, love, care, support. That's what he did. He supported, and now we want to support him, and we don't want to put him up there, and we want to remember him. That's all. It's not about the tragedy.
Thank you. Very well said.
Oh, and one more thing.
Sure.
For senior night, that would be very important to have it up there and see him there, because we know that he would have been there. that's just in a few days, so if we could hurry up this process.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Laura Miranda. I was here last time in regards to my nephew in the Jersey.
Welcome back.
Thanks. Like they said, our family and the people that loved him have already gone through the tragedy, and everybody is trying to heal. The Jersey represents a whole lot more than just the loss of somebody that we loved. And as I stated before, for anybody to be brave enough to get on that court to play their hearts out for their school or against any other team is huge. That jersey is going to represent a whole lot more. And one of the things I did want to point out, I heard that you're thinking of retiring the number. It's a great gesture. It really is, and we appreciate that. Unfortunately, myself and a lot of people in this community are not going to be around in 10 or 20 years. So that jersey hanging up there and still being able to tell the story of why that jersey is there. And some of us are not going to be on this earth in 20, 30, or 40 years. That jersey, along with the story, other than a retired number, needs to be preserved. And it needs to be told that this school committee and this community cared about somebody that gave everything he had to stand up and to make sure not just himself, but the other kids and everybody that he came across, including the girls' basketball team. Now, I know when I played basketball back in the day, there was very few people in the stands to watch girls play basketball. There was a lot of, I went to the boys' games, but there wasn't a lot of people supporting our girls, and they worked their hearts off too. This decision should be made sooner than later. The policies and procedures that need to be put in place need to be made sooner than later. We're not asking for a lot. We're not asking you guys to pay any money. And I think one of the things that confused me on the last meeting was that it was compared to somebody that has committed suicide or somebody that has lost their lives to an overdose. This is not what happened here. Any student or any young adult or anybody that loses their life is a tragedy in itself. Our nephew, their son, was killed by a drunk driver. And 3 other young men lost their lives that day too. We're not asking for a lot other than to memorialize him in a way that will give our students in this community some way of hope to get into that gym versus shooting up, being in a party, drinking and driving, being on that court. It's important. And I also did a little bit more research in regards to the diversity in this community and what the statistics are in regards to the population of minorities versus non-people of color. There's a big, huge difference. And I'm not sure how many of you went through diversity training, and I'm not trying to tell you that's what you need to do. But when you are a person of color, it is very difficult to get up in the morning sometimes to come into a school system that is predominantly doesn't understand even how you're combing your hair that day. This particular young man was incredible. He dressed to the T, he had a smile, and he made sure everybody he came in contact, and it didn't even matter if it was on the court, even in a store, to make sure to look in your eyes and say, you were okay. We're not going to be here in 10 years or 5 years or 50 years to let anybody know why that number is retired. And that jersey is going to tell that story. So please, sooner than later with this decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. Next up, this is actually a public hearing for the fiscal 2018 Monomoy Regional School budget. Start that presentation now. Mr. Carpenter.
So we have our annual budget hearing that this is the same budget presentation that the committee's heard before, and it's the same budget presentation that we've shared with the select boards in both of our towns recently. So the numbers haven't changed both on the town side and on the school side. So we'll try to go through it fairly quickly. I also wanted to make sure that we put into this a little addition where we talk about the special education costs that the district has, and just kind of highlight, at least in part of the presentation, and Melissa will sort of step in and take care of that, to look at the special ed drivers and drivers out of student services that impact a school district's budget. So the challenge that we have with budgets is we ultimately have a chunk of our budgets relying on Chapter 70 state aid. So the state aid behind this budget has increased. When we put together the budget, we try to conservatively assume that the state aid is at least going to be the same as it is in the past fiscal year, and we were a little bit worried as the budget was playing, or as we were waiting for the numbers to come from Beacon Hill, that the governor's budget might actually go down and have the state funding for the school district go down, but the state funding stayed pretty much where it is. There's an extra, Katie, how much per student? $20 per student is the increase, which over the course of the whole district is, less than $40,000 increase in the state aid that the district is seeing. So the trajectory of state aid, we had been anticipating that the state aid would be going up at least level. It has at least in the governor's budget that's come out, it's leveled off quite a lot compared to the trajectory that state aid increases have taken in past fiscal years. The other factor that's important in understanding with budgets is that each town is required under the law to provide a minimum amount of funding towards the schools. So Harwich has a minimum required contribution that's set by the state. Chatham has a minimum required contribution. One factor behind that is how many students from Chatham are in the schools, how many students from Harwich are going to the public schools. But the other factor, big factor there, is the wealth of the two communities, and that wealth factor that determines what the minimum required contribution is going to be is based both on real estate wealth and also the wealth of the year-round residents of the population. And I think for many communities on Cape Cod, the folks that are here year-round don't have the same wealth factor as those that are buying some oceanfront properties. So you'll have the wealth factor for our communities is really heavily weighted towards what happens because of those vacation properties that both of our communities benefit from. So in terms of developing the budget, we looked at both our mission statement, strategic plan, the objectives that we wanted to accomplish. We've also looked at trying to make sure that the class sizes behind this stay within the guidelines that we have previously spoken about in budget hearings, of making sure that the average class sizes at our middle school and high school are 19 students plus or minus 2 in our classes, and at the elementary school that the class sizes on average are staying below 18 plus or minus 1. The other thing that's really important with our budget is we want to make sure that our budget fits within the fiscal wherewithals of our two towns. The assumptions behind this is that the state aid will follow where the governor's budget numbers are. Ultimately, that may change, but oftentimes it changes after town meetings, as it did in this past year. That the minimum required contributions will be unchanged from what the governor's budget numbers were. We've level funded school choice and circuit breaker offsets in this. We are presuming that the health insurance will be about a 12% increase based on the rates that have been set by the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, 12% for active employees and 10% for retirees. And there's a slight enrollment shift towards Chatham with in this that the three-year rolling average has shifted ever so slightly towards Chatham, so that for the operations in debt, Chatham represents 26.52% of ultimately the assessed values behind this budget, and Harwich 73.48%. And finally, the district is making a contribution towards OPEB. OPEB stands for the outstanding post-employment benefits. So it's the benefit costs that loom out there in the future when school districts are paying the benefits for retirees that are living long beyond 65. So what are those long-term fiscal costs for the district, and making sure that we're setting money aside to help defray the cost of those in future budget years. In terms of things behind the budget, we have in our school district 12% of the students that are attending our school district come from other towns throughout the Cape. They're choiced in here. Most of those, if they're regular education students, bring with them $5,000 in tuition that comes from their sending school district. The students that are here from Chatham, 23% are from Chatham and 65% are from Harwich. And the trend, the trend there has remained fairly consistent in terms of the ratio of choice, Harwich and Chatham, over the past fiscal years. Foundation enrollment is the enrollment of students that live in Harwich and Chatham that attend public schools other than a technical high school. So it would be the students that are attending schools here in Monomoy, but it would also be children that are attending charter schools and children that are attending are choosing to Nauset or to DY or another school district. A promising thing for our school district is that you'll notice that since FY14, we're seeing a continued growth, albeit slight, in the foundation enrollment, which means that our communities have seen young families come here, and we're seeing more children in our two towns over the last 4 years. It's a good trend for us, and it bodes well when the trend of foundation enrollment for the Cape has actually been ticking down by about 5% over the last 5 years. So good for our towns, and it's possibly a factor of the fact that the town's invested in a new high school that's brought some families there. The piece of concern that we still have is that we still see families and students that are leaving the district and choicing out to charter schools and other districts to attend school, and that then has funds and students moving out of the district. So just in terms of staffing, the budget that we have put together is a level staff budget, which means we're anticipating we'll have the same number of staffing at each one of the schools this year as next year, and so we see within the district there's almost 340 FTEs of staff. We would see that in the upcoming budget. In terms of things that offset a budget for the towns, we have in a regional school district something that's called an excess and deficiency fund that in on the town side would be very similar to what happens in free cash, so that funds that are left over at the end of any fiscal year roll into this excess and deficiency account and are certified into the account. That excess and deficiency account can get up to 5% of the district's total budget, so it can be equivalent to 5% of that district's total budget. If the fund exceeds that, then the funds need to be returned to the towns. So we're not up to 5% yet, but we have been, as a regional school district, trying to build this reserve fund. It's important that we do have reserves because we don't really have the ability to have a budget challenge mid-year. Let's say there's a very expensive student with special needs that moves from out of state into our district, and suddenly we need to go and educate that child. We need to have a way to access some money to make sure that that can happen. This could be that type of a reserve that you could go to. So when we started as a regional school district, this excess and deficiency fund was zero. After that first year, it went from zero to $514,000. FY14, it was $1.4 million. We started to use some of the excess and deficiency fund to offset budgets in future fiscal years. So we used $600,000 of that excess and deficiency fund to help soften the cost of the FY16 budget on the towns. We used an additional $331,000 to soften the FY17, this current year's budget on the towns. At the moment, our excess and deficiency account is certified at $1.6 million. We plan in this budget of using $333,326 to offset the cost to reduce the amount of the assessments on our two towns in this budget. So that means that what we see and would look forward into that excess and deficiency account, we would be subtracting from the $1.6 million, a third of $1,000,000 from that would come out of that account to.
Wouldn't that be $660,000?
So right, so we'd be taking the $331,000 from 17 plus the $333,000 from to support 18. So that account balance goes down, but at the end of this current FY17 year, there'll be some additional funds moving into it. So it's an account that's constantly having funds that are pulled out of it if we use them to offset a budget, but also at the end of any fiscal year, funds roll back into the excess and efficiency account. The other thing that we do in this budget is we have funds that come in, that we anticipate coming in through school choice. So we're anticipating that we will see about $1.5 million in revenue coming in for school choice tuition. We budget in this $1.5 million. We budget the same amount of money that we anticipate coming in is budgeted to offset costs within this budget. Circuit breaker is another type of reserve account that you can use for special education costs. You can carry funds over for up to 2 years with circuit breaker so that we have some reserves left at the end of this budgeting process, where our circuit breaker account gives us a little reserve of $231,847. And lastly, in terms of what flows out from our budget, one of the big factors are the school choice tuitions for students that are attending other districts. That's just over $1 million of tuition money flowing out of the district. But then there's also tuition money that's flowing to charter schools. There's a smaller number of students attend charter schools than choice out, but the charter schools with each child flows roughly $15,000 worth of tuition money per child, whereas the school choice tuitions have only $5,000 flowing out per student. We talked in our budget conversations, both here and at the school, at the selectmen's meeting, about contractually obligated budget drivers. And of the budget increases that we see between FY17 and 18, 92% of those increases are actually dictated contractually. We have our contracts with our teachers and our custodians, and that specify what the salary increases will be for the next couple of years. Those are factored into this budget. We also have with our transportation company, there's a clause in terms of how much the transportation contract will increase over the year. We know what the increases are going to be for health insurance, which we're obligated to provide to our employees. There's property insurance that we need to carry as a district that has increases, and there are also there are contracts that we have engaged in conversations here to shift away from the old traditional servers that we've had and to head towards the hyper-convergence that Jim so adeptly went and discussed with the committee. Those contracts are in this. The Mac video processing lab that's off the library here is also in there. So you have those contracts that weren't in prior budgets are here and are part of those contractually stipulated increases. And then there's a set of new initiatives that the district has undergone that are within this budget, ranging from the new Math and Focus program that we put in place for kindergarten through grade 7 math. That has consumables that weren't in previous budgets that are here now. We have physics and oceanography textbooks at the high school that we have been piloting this year. We know which ones we want to purchase. We need to pay for those texts that are being piloted this year. One of the big ones is we have talked about launching a one-to-one initiative with Chromebooks like they have at the high school, but doing that at the middle school. That has a cost to launch that using a three-year lease on those Chromebooks of $33,833. And then there were other things that we had in the budgeting process wanted to see happen. One of the key things was to add an additional school bus. It's pretty clear that the ridership times, particularly for Chatham Elementary, where we have 3 buses at Chatham Elementary School, and 2 of those 3 buses had some of the longest ridership times in the district, and were routinely not making their runs on time. So we need to go and add 1 more bus to the fleet to get our ridership times down, and that by adding that to the fleet for Chatham Elementary, it will also then help bring down the ridership times for the middle school runs. So we have added a bus into this. Adding a bus is another $62,190 for the additional bus for the year. There was a hope that we could have gotten more things, more initiatives sort of started, but when the governor numbers came out and had a shift in the minimum required contribution that shifted towards Harwich, that sort of created a budget situation where we needed to pull our total budget down to meet Harwich's number, and that was offset largely by savings that we saw within the health insurance. Then when we were initially starting the budgeting process, we were anticipating health insurance could be as much as 14%, and that broke closer to 12%. So one of the key pieces behind the budget are the special education costs and costs associated with student services. So I just want to, Melissa, have a chance to kind of talk about how special education falls within an overall Monomoy budget.
Good evening. Melissa McGuire, Director of Student Services. So I'm hoping this is going to help certainly for the community and the committee to better understand a little deeper some of our costs and what we're faced with. This quote is actually my quote, and it came about many years ago when we were, and I think many schools were faced with a significant budget crisis. And so what I continually looked at is that there was a divide in understanding the cost of special education. So that was constantly visible, and our students were invisible. And the word invisible is, I don't think you can see it very well because it's supposed to be invisible. And I thought that was really important to understand that our students need to be visible and understood in terms of what our costs are to support their education. So I'm going to focus on enrollment, specifically to our students who receive special education. I'm going to talk just a little bit more about circuit breaker. I'll talk about our out-of-district supports, some mitigating costs, transportation, extended year services, contractual services, operational costs, grants, future considerations, and just concluding. So our enrollment, this is what's probably one of the more trickier pieces in special education, because what happens is on October 1st, we report our numbers of students that are enrolled. And one of those groups is, of course, our students receiving special education services. Well, part of the problem with that number on October 1st is that special education is an everyday ongoing enrollment, because we are evaluating students throughout the year. And depending on whether they're eligible or not, that number will shift. So when I put numbers with that October 1st number, and then we put the numbers currently that are being served, there's going to be a shift, as there will be a shift again in June, when we finish out the year with those students who may have terminated from special education services, who may have been evaluated and were eligible for special education services. So it's a fluctuating number. But what's nice about this number for Monomoy is that we certainly are maintaining below the state average of what school districts are seeing for percentage of students receiving special education. So I know that number, again, can be confusing, and at the bottom what I did is included the current numbers of January, and of those 340, which is different obviously than the October 1 number, is it includes 21 students who have been referred for an evaluation, and we don't know yet whether that number will be impacted depending on their eligibility. So in looking at those numbers, so it includes students who have been referred for an evaluation, and again, this is a comparison of October 1 to the January, and of course now in February that number again might be different. It includes the referrals that are in place, and we see our highest referrals for special education after the winter break. And that's because what happens is students are leaving, and there's some regression that may happen, and then they're coming back and they're struggling more. And what we're doing is, through our RTI process, might not be enough yet, so we're going to put a referral in for a special education evaluation. So of those numbers, not all students will be found eligible. Some students in this process as well. For example, we just had a meeting last week where a student terminated from special education services, meaning he met his goals and didn't require that level of support anymore. So that's why the fluctuation is so great, and it can be confusing when we're talking about numbers. The other piece that really impacts numbers is preschool. Preschool is enrollment based on age 3. And of course, children turn 3 all year long. So that's another number that impacts our enrollment. The other piece too, which fluctuates, is students who have moved into the district, as well as students who are here through school choice. So what I did is, just to give you an example, is I pulled out the best I could from what's our SIMS data, our data that are reported to the state of our October number, and the number that we would have to report in June to DESE. So for example, in 2015, our October 1 number was 295, but at the end of the year, there were 329 students receiving special education services. So that's kind of a year worth of looking at students in and out of special education. And then what I did pull out, I really wanted to drill down and get a sense of what those numbers look like, so that it helps folks to understand, is that of those numbers, 24 students were terminated. 35 were actually in referral. So at the end of the year, that's another bump. It's the end of the year, people are concerned and worried and may refer a student for evaluation. and then 23 were not found eligible. So you can see there can be quite a variance in the enrollment numbers. The only piece of circuit breaker that I wanted to point out, because Mr. Carpenter certainly showed the circuit breaker, is what I always look at for circuit breaker is, the legislation initially had said that, 75% of those costs above foundation would be reimbursed. And of course, in the small print, it's if budget allows it. And so what I really wanted to illustrate is that through the last 4 years that there's been a fluctuation, and only 2 of those years has circuit breaker been fully funded or reimbursed back to the districts. So that's every year a moving target as well, and a lot of times that's where they'll go to make some cuts in the circuit breaker. And what's happened with the foundation amount, that has increased steadily over the years, but the formula in terms of the reimbursement has not remained consistent, so that's something that we watch closely as well. Our out-of-district, those are students who have significant disabilities that require very unique services that we are unable to provide within our schools here. So I wanted to show a few years in terms of our enrollment for students out of district. And as you can see, moving into next year, there's 16 students that we are projecting to be out of district. 2 currently who are experiencing significant mental health challenges that we suspect will probably continue to need the level of support that they're receiving, and 1 student who has moved to the district that is in a residential program. But the numbers, again, looking at our enrollment for out of district, and again, coming from a larger district, the numbers are impressive with the low enrollment for out of district. So what we look at when we consider a student who needs out-of-district services is first of all, those disabilities are very unique, and we don't have the types of resources or services that would provide them with their educational needs. We also have what's called the move-in law, if you're familiar with that. So for a student who moves to Monomoy, who may be in an out-of-district placement, there is a cutoff date, and financially for us, which is the last day in March. So come April 1st, if somebody has moved to our district before that date, we are responsible for that student as of July 1st for the tuition in their out-of-district placement. If they move in after April 1st, the previous district is responsible for, of course, the remainder of the year, but also the following year. But of course, that also falls on us too. So if we have a student who we are supporting financially in an out-of-district placement, and they move out of the district, okay, the same applies. So we could, in fact, if they move out after April 1st, we would still need to provide that tuition for the following fiscal year. So that's something that we constantly have to pay attention to as well. And then finally, looking at the unforeseen circumstances, unfortunately for students that may be experiencing a significant disability or a significant challenge that comes up that we aren't able to address in our district, we have to seek an out-of-district placement. So some of the great things happening that actually mitigate those costs and actually prevent more students from, in fact, attending out-of-district placements are, first of all, our integrated preschool. A lot of districts don't have integrated preschools where they're tuitioning students to either other districts or programs that support students with special needs. We have intensive programs at our elementary schools. We have an intensive program at the middle school, an intensive program at the high school, and our post-graduation program at the high school. And when I'm talking about intensive, I'm talking about students with, again, significant disabilities, whether it's cognitive, whether it's physical, whether it's some other challenge that we are able to provide for that student because they're not able to access the general ed curriculum full-time, that they need services that are pulled out or in a substantially separate program to have their needs met. So all of these programs actually mitigate the need for further out-of-district placements. And this is where we want to continue to look at the types of programs that we can provide to bring our students back into the district. For transportation, just looking at this, interestingly, we moved some money this year, and we'll do so next year. We have a grant, it's a federal grant, it's an entitlement grant that in the past has supported staff. And one of the things that we looked at with that is that we were paying an additional MTRS fee for the staff that are on that grant. So by taking staff off of that grant, it saved $18,000. So we were able to move transportation into the grant and staff into the appropriated for a wash, but it gave us the $18,000 to be able to put into the appropriated budget. So again, we'll shift some additional funds, but as we're looking at our ability to allocate resources to that grant, we also want to be mindful that transportation has a Medicaid reimbursement as well. So if we put all of it, as we put a good portion of it this year, if we put too much of it in, we have to be cognizant of the Medicaid reimbursement we also want to receive for transportation. Extended year services. This is a service for students who, again, are eligible for this, and it's really based on a student's regression. It's called recoupment. In other words, when a student leaves at the end of the year, any student, we expect that they're going to lose some skills, that they're going to regress a little bit over the summer, and when they come back, that the teachers are spending, up to, 2 to 4 weeks in basically recouping those skills so that they can move forward in their instruction. For a student that has intensive special needs or who we have identified who regresses after those periods of time, we really need to make sure they minimally maintain those skills so that when they come back, the recoupment isn't as drastic. Sometimes that can last up to 8 or 9 weeks, and that's not what we want for students. We want them to be into their instruction similar to where their peers would be. So that our extended year services supports students at all levels. And again, they are found eligible at their IEP meeting, their individual education program meeting, for those services. And this number changes year to year, so when you see the difference in the funds that have been required for that, it's because the number of students who are eligible changes each year depending on their needs. Our contracted services, so in this particular area we have what's called medical and therapeutic services and psychological. Our medical and therapeutic services, and these are the things that I talked about in the overview of special education, just so that it would make it easier to understand this. But this is like our physical therapist, it's our vision folks, it's our orientation and mobility. It's specialized services and contracted services for students' needs. The psychological services include a psychologist who evaluates for us and recommends services for students with unique disabilities, and it includes our psychologist who's a BCBA for individuals who may have some behavioral challenges. So that's our contracted services, and what we're going to be doing next year again is we're going to be offsetting some of that contracted services with our federal grant. Some of our operational costs, the list in terms of legal fees, testing supplies, these are things that are required, especially the testing, because to evaluate a student, we have to have a certain amount of testing and type of testing to evaluate the area of suspected disability. And what happens with tests is that once a test is revised, you only have 2 years in which to replace the current test, and it happens quite frequently. So we always have to make sure that we are on top of the type of testing supplies that we need, and that we, within the 2-year period, are replacing revised editions of testing. General supplies are those type of supplies that are needed to support students in their special education programs. It's not just paper and pencil, it's a lot of different unique type of materials that they might need, adaptive materials, the textbooks and the technology, it's different computer devices that they might need to help them with their language and to help them with their learning. And then finally, we have a professional development line, so that teachers are constantly current in their practice, and because the needs of special education change so frequently, we need to make sure that we keep up with our practices. Grants, we have several grants that also help support our work in special education. Our biggest grant is the federal grant, which I was speaking about earlier. That's about $488,000, and that's where we are applying some of our contracted services, transportation in that grant. We also have an improvement grant, which is specifically targeted for professional development, which then coincides with our federal grant, and we have a lot of reporting that we have to do and targets that we have to meet with those improvement grants. We also have an early childhood grant that supports preschool activities. We have a secondary transition grant, which is been in the past few years, that has been a target for schools where we're supporting students 18 to 22, but also really developing a SOAP sequence to prepare students with special needs to be available, ready for the workforce, for college potentially, or for whatever endeavor they have. Excuse me. We were awarded a grant through Safe and Supportive Schools for anti-addiction, but as you know that through 9C cuts, we lost that grant. And so that total brings us to $515,000 in grants that support special education. And we have a grant that is pending right now. We've received communication that's being reviewed, but that's through the Attorney General, and that also is for anti-addiction. So looking to the future, and in my short time here and my assessment of our needs, one of the highest needs that I looked at certainly is our mental health, social, emotional, and behavioral challenges that our schools face, and the resources we have available to support students. And this is not new for me in kind of my 30 years of doing what I'm doing and looking at what is the best and most effective practice for supporting special education programming. One of the things I've always been concerned about is when you split a role, for example, the school psychologist, and this has been a common thing only because of resources. The school psychologist also is what's called a team chair. By law, we have to have an individual who is able to commit resources for special education for students. And so what happens when you put a school psychologist in that role is two things. One is they're also evaluators. So it makes it difficult for the psychologist to evaluate a student on one hand and then sit and be the person who is committing resources or making recommendations for a program and a plan. So I get concerned about that model. The other part of that, which is more alarming for me, is it takes about 50% of their time. So they may be in a meeting, facilitating an IEP meeting, meanwhile we have kids that might be in crisis. And so for me, that's a bigger concern, is that a school psychologist's time is not effectively being used to support students and to hopefully mitigate more needs and more resources. So for me, when I look at our infrastructure and for future, certainly future consideration, it's being able to have a team chair at the two largest buildings, the high school and the middle school, that can do all the program evaluation, oversight, develop programs for additional needs that we might have, to supervise, evaluate, provide the professional development, but that then would allow certainly the school psychologist to address those needs that we are most concerned about. One of the ways we would hope to think about bringing that into the district is looking at our out-of-district students and potentially looking at if a student is able to come back and we can support them, that may in fact be able to address that need. But it is definitely something I would like to keep for our future consideration. And so in conclusion, looking at the strengths of the district, we have a lot of strong programs that have built capacity and have allowed us to really support our students within the district. We do have a low out-of-district enrollment, and we have effective use of our consultants to service that low incidence of special needs. And then the consideration, again, is to strengthen our infrastructure to ensure efficient and effective implementation of our special education programs. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Anybody have any questions at this point?
Yeah, I have a few questions. First of all, help me understand the juggling of the money. I understand that numbers of students fluctuates, and I understand the various sources of money from grants and what is budgeted in us. So is that like a constant dance to keep everything in balance? Or?
It's a constant dance to look at the needs of students and look at our resources and assign resources in a way that's effective, not only effective, for the students certainly, but also cost effective in how we deliver our services. So yes, and so, those teams are sitting down constantly and looking at what are the needs of the students and how are we going to deliver the services that we need to.
Mm-hmm. I see that as a big challenge as far as providing the needs, that the kids need. So Is there ever a cap on what's going on?
So the law is very clear under federal and state that one of the things you can't ever talk about is cost related to special education. So, and what I mean is that when,
Quiet.
no, but it's a great question, because this is in the past, and that's where my quote came from. There's not an understanding of the costs, and it can cause some stress levels sometimes because we see those costs. But really what the law says is that our job is to reasonably calculate a free appropriate public education, understanding the unique needs of individuals with disabilities and ensuring that they have access to an educational program. So the cost is kind of the taboo thing in the law, because you're supposed to provide every student with what they need to have educational benefit, to make effective progress in their educational program. So it's a tough question, because it's a huge driver in a budget, any budget. So it's something that, we are mindful of, and we're always paying attention, and I'm impressed certainly with what I see in the schools, and how they're delivering services. I see we have some work to do, because they're stretched so thin that I worry that if two more students move into one school, we don't have the teacher that can, so we're constantly having to assess that.
Wow. And then just on the operational costs slide, it says legal fees for fiscal 15 was 91,000, but in 17 it was only 2,000.
Well, that's just to date. So we haven't gone to the end of the year yet, but for all of those, just so I could have a kind of a balance of where we were. So one of the things with the legal costs, and
Yeah.
this could potentially certainly be a huge driving piece, to have the opportunity to follow due process. So a parent certainly has the opportunity to follow due process, meaning if, they have questions about their child's educational program or disagree with the district's proposal of that program, they have a right to due process, meaning they can go to a hearing. To go to a hearing, you need legal counsel. So there may be one year that you go to hearing twice, and that's going to be very expensive. There might be a year where you do not go to a hearing, where you don't require the legal services. So the circumstances are going to dictate the legal costs.
That's what I was wondering about, what did dictate. And I guess my last question was on the future part as far as the team chair. That makes so much sense, what you say, to have a team chair as opposed to having a psychologist do it. Would that someone add that to their current role, or would that have to be a new hire?
Well, if it was to a current role, it would take them away from because we only have teachers, and, we don't have kind of extraneous roles that could pick it up. It would also be someone that we would want to have the appropriate license for that role.
Sure.
So that you could really maximize them as a resource, meaning that they can evaluate, because that's, certainly another concern is who is evaluating the specialists, the nurses, and, the special education teachers, the occupational therapists, but a license that would allow for that supervision and evaluation, but also program design and oversight, so that we're really looking at how to expand those programs that are actually mitigating costs for additional resources. So it's really more than just sitting at team meetings. It's really looking at the breadth of the program and supporting the school, the administration, but really being able to enhance the programs that we have in our schools.
Okay, thank you.
Stowe.
I'm just familiar with the team chairs that we've had in the past, which has usually been a special ed teacher, or maybe a school psychologist. But I'm wondering, so what you have in mind for this is new administrative positions?
Well, so I've done it a couple of ways. I've done it where it's been a director position, and I don't think that needs to, because, usually that's for a really large building, but a team chair position where it's, similar to a department head, okay, where they have more responsibilities for ensuring, kind of the smooth operations of the department. So similar to that, but I would want that person to have the appropriate license to evaluate, because you have to have a certain license, you have to have a director license to evaluate. So we would want to make sure that that person and also has the background knowledge and the legal knowledge. So my other concern with not having somebody with that credential, because it can't be me in every all four buildings, is understanding the law and making sure that we are in compliance with our state and federal regulations related to delivering special education services. And that's something I'm passionate about ensuring that we are doing those things. So that person, we would want to have that experience. I would not expect to, just put a teacher into that role and then have kind of that burden on them of fully understanding the implications of our laws that we are accountable to.
So it would be an administrator then?
It doesn't have to be. I've had team chairs who are not administrators, but who can evaluate, or you can make it an administrator. I think that would be a conversation of what we would want that to look like.
What you're saying is they need to have a director license, that's an administrative license.
It is, but it doesn't mean you have to be an administrator. I've had many team chairs that aren't also responsible as an administrator for some other higher level types of expectations we have of administrator.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ryder.
On the contractor services and operational costs, why is the budget amount for fiscal year 18 so much lower?
For which one?
Contractor services, both of them.
Oh, I'm on our operational, sorry. Because we're moving some of those more costs into our grant.
Is that the same for the operational costs that are lower on the next slide?
No, those aren't grant, those are just looking at sharpening the pencil, really looking at the budget and trying to balance where our other needs might be, which might be greater.
So, looking at our fiscal year 15, 16, and 17 legal fees, fiscal year 17 to date is still pretty low, but we have a lot more the year to go. It seems that budgeting 12,000 looks awfully low.
My experience, in all honesty, in having done this for a very long time and understanding the complexities of law, 12,000 is a decent amount of money for the position I'm currently in. And it safeguards us for what I would anticipate should we ever need to follow due process, that it would support that.
So back to the contractor services that you say are covered by grants. I see that you have a section on grants here, but it doesn't show allocation to what areas. Could we have that information, or could I get the information from you at this point?
Yeah, I think it all is outlined in the budget itself, where the dollars are. We did create we shifted some lines for, especially for some of these contracted services. So what was happening is each school had a line for therapeutic or psychological services. But from when I spoke with, our teams, thinking about putting that into a district level so that schools access it as they need it versus allocating a certain amount, which we might not know how much time is required by a BCBA or by a vision specialist. So we moved some of that, and then looking at our previous costs and then where we can allocate it to grants, so things have moved, but it is outlined specifically in the budget where those costs are.
Okay, I guess I'm looking at, I'll just take a specific example of psychological, where it says 83,956 for 17 and then 2,000 for 18, which, just from looking at this is a huge difference. You say it's covered by a grant, but could I have the information of what that actual amount is, even if it's covered by the grant, and then you can subtract the grant from it, and then it'll show the 2,000 in the budget. I guess that's what I'm looking for. If that could be provided, that would be really helpful. Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Russell.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Melissa, good job. Nice information, a nice simple package. A couple of questions, totally divergent. On our packet, page 6, the slide on transportation, the out-of-district transportation, and this is really just from my understanding, the 544, 464, fairly substantial amount of money. Now, that includes, or I'm guessing, more than just the 5 students down in Osterville that are at the collaborative.
Yes, it includes all 13 students who need to be transported to their schools. Some students are off Cape. There's not a school down here supporting them. So they're being transported off Cape.
Daily.
Yes.
Last question. You mentioned one of our success stories, we have a pre-K program that's paired up with some youngsters who come in for some summer programming prior to beginning kindergarten. Is that correct?
It's an all-year preschool program.
Okay.
You're talking about the integrated preschool program?
Yes, yeah.
That's an all-year program, and many of those students certainly would qualify for the extended year services as well.
I guess my question is on the attached packet that you
The
gave us.
report.
There's a section on the cohort reporting, it happens to be 214-15, and it speaks about the percentage of preschoolers who substantially increase their growth based on attending that type of program. Now, in our district, it's blanked off because we don't have that stat. I'd be interested to know because we do have that program.
So what's interesting about the appendix, as you might be familiar, every 6 years we go through what's called a coordinated program review. And basically, in that program review, we are responsible for over 100 what's called indicators. So they come and they evaluate whether or not we are following those guidelines, but they're specifically cited to those federal and state regulations and laws. So what those data do is, instead of in that cycle that we have an evaluation, they may ask us for data. So depending on the cohort year that we're in, you may have some data and you may not. So you might see that data in the next cohort year, which might be next year. We do have preschool outcomes as part of our cohort this year. And because that's trailing, it's not current, so it makes it difficult. So what I do is I put that because it is an indicator we have to work on, even though there might not be data in that section right now. But we do have preschool outcomes this year, and that will be reported on for next year.
Okay. I guess what I'm leading to is, it would be nice to know that the youngsters who qualify for this summer program prior to coming into kindergarten and they're on IEPs.
So a student...
No, let me finish so
Yeah.
because I thought I'm losing it.
Okay.
Compared to the youngsters who are in the same situation but can't attend that program, that there would be, I would hope, a substantial growth, kind of an argument for preschool, for regular ed youngsters and special ed youngsters. So there's no data that says we see dramatic increases in youngsters who do come versus those who start September 8th.
Right, and of course, we don't have those data because the only students that would receive services are students who have qualified at age 3 under special education to receive service. And oftentimes that doesn't actually even happen in the summer because we don't have enough data on the student to know whether or not they qualify for summer services. So that's a huge moving target, most definitely. But of course, the argument for, as you know, the universal pre-K in general is you would suspect that those data would show growth in preparation for entry into kindergarten, just like kindergarten full day, whatever, being in kindergarten in general shows growth in preparation for first grade. But we don't really have those data because there's not enough numbers to support what you're suggesting right now, unless you actually have a universal program. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. I'm just digesting it. I think we're on the same track.
Okay.
Ms. Stout.
On page 5, where you have the diagram of the mitigating costs.
Of the presentation? Or?
Yes, of your presentation.
Yes.
This is mitigating costs. It doesn't include Chatham Elementary. There is some program there, isn't there?
There is, and I think that's just an error in my little graphics it should have had AGS and CES, and I think I got lost in my text box. And yes, I apologize. I think when I said it, I said Chatham and Howard, so I apologize.
Okay, that's fine, thanks.
Ms. Ryder.
On this additional report you gave us, did you pull this information from Desi?
The appendix?
Most of what's here is just from Desi, right?
I'd have to look at what specific ones you're looking at. Yes, many of the data are from DESI.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very informative. Mr. Carpenter continues.
So how Melissa's fits into everything else. So what you see up here is the budget by category, and this ultimately is what the school committee votes when they vote a budget. They vote 1,000 district leadership administrators' salaries and wages, X amount of money, tallying up to the bottom line here is a $115,65 budget, which is a 4.8% increase over the FY17 budget. The operating budget is a 5.2% increase over FY17, and I'll again emphasize that there's a difference between budget and assessment, and when we use the excess and deficiency, that then pulls that percentage significantly down, so that no one at home needs to go and worry that the superintendent's proposing a 5% increase or a 4.8% increase. To kind of do a little dovetail with what Melissa said, so special education, where is it showing up in these lines? So if you think about it, it shows up in district leadership with Melissa's role as student service, the director of student services. It shows up in instructional salaries. So we have students that that are in our special education classes within our building, and so roughly 20% of our teaching staff are there. The instructional salaries and wages also includes a number of teaching assistants that support those students with special needs. So there's a large chunk of what's in the instructional salaries and wages that's there. It shows up on that the 9,000 line. So that 9,000 line is programs with other school districts. So there's charter school, there's school choice, but there's also out-of-district expenses are showing up there. So it hits throughout the budget. One of the big things that has been discussed in our meetings with the selectmen, particularly when we're in Harwich, is that the town of Harwich has taken what is in our capital plan for technology and maintenance and allocated these monies to be part of a debt exclusion vote. So when we speak before the Harwich Finance Committee meeting this upcoming week, they'll want to sort of discuss the different things that we're going to do, but really we have things within that that touch every building and that really will impact all students in the district in some way, shape, or form. So at Chatham Elementary School, there's everything from roof repairs, small roof repairs that will be going on to putting in some the electrical to run the pump, the wellhead that will ultimately bring water up to go and irrigate the playground, to replacing some of the classroom flooring with tile. At the Chatham Elementary School, they're going to be upgrading the Wi-Fi system with these new AeroHive units. And at Harwich Elementary School, the big item that we've been talking about is really revamping the cafeteria space, which is a partially subterranean space, and taking the flooring that's sort of cracked and buckling, it's tile that was put down on concrete, and replacing that with a sort of a floating faux wood type of flooring, painting the walls, replacing the lighting fixtures. But it's something that is important for Harwich Elementary School because the the after-school programs that many families make use of, and that with the change in start times, even more families will be making use of them, happen in that space, and we want to make sure that that space is bright for the, for the students. And at the middle school, we started the process of kind of working on the exterior shingles on the straight side of the building, so there would be some more shingle maintenance on the off side of the building, and also replacing some of the carpeting in classrooms. There at the middle school, one of the big things that we've talked about is this new one-to-one Chromebook initiative, and making sure that we get that happening. At the high school, there's the Chromebooks that we have at the high school have a 3-year sort of rotation that we put on them. If we don't see our capital plan funded, we'll have some Chromebooks that are going to be having to go into to year 4. So the total of that ends up being Harwich's share of the capital and technology plan is $224,114. That's planned for a debt exclusion. Chatham's share of that is built into the Chatham budget. They are not having a separate debt exclusion. It would be $80,886. So if it's not funded in Harwich, the Chatham money doesn't come too. So it's so we really need the support of the Harwich parents and taxpayers to see these projects funded. One of the things I want to emphasize here, this is sort of a pie chart on how the budget is spent. The bulk of the school district's budget is spent on instructional salaries, and so if you take the instructional salaries, the nursing and custodial salaries, administrator salaries, that's about half of the budget. Then you've got employee benefits. The 68% of a school district's budget are those personnel costs. To loop back to what Melissa was presenting on, she talked about out of district, and that what we do well here at Monomoy is the out of district costs, which is that the orange sliver in this budget. It's 2% of this budget. So there are 16 students that represent 2% of this budget. And she had mentioned that in a larger district that she was with, that would have been a much larger pie slice. In my former district, that pie slice would have been larger than what our school choice and charter schools. It would have been almost 4 times the size of that. So one of the things that I think we do well, and I appreciate Melissa thinking out of the box on how we can even do that better, is how can we go and potentially serve students here within our schools and see the amount of funds that we're spending in out-of-district tuitions as small as we can be, while at the same time making sure we meet each of those students' needs. How it's funded, budget's funded largely by the assessment, which comes from the taxpayers in the 2 towns. So we see 85% of the budget comes from the taxpayers in the 2 towns. The state aid, when it comes to Chapter 70 state aid, is only 8% of the total budget. And we see the next biggest piece up there are the tuitions that come in. 4% of the budget comes in from tuitions that are the school choice students coming here. If you break down how the money's spent, and divide it by the number of students that are attending the district and divide that by 180 days, the cost of how much it costs to educate a student every day they come here is $111.68. I'll skip over these. Just as I mentioned, our budget increase, if we look at the increases over prior fiscal years, it's increased here, 4.84% in these budget categories are operating, capital, the high school debt, and the small debt that's left on the Chatham Middle High School. But again, that 4.84% increase in budget over the prior fiscal year is not what the assessment increase is. So a big driver in the assessment is the minimum required contribution, and the curveball we were thrown when the governor released his numbers was a shift in minimum required contribution back from Chatham to Harwich, which created a situation where Chatham's minimum required contribution is still going up proportionally more than Harwich's, but it was in our initial budget iterations that we brought here before the school committee, was going up significantly more in Chatham, and the wealth factors in Harwich, based on their calculations on Beacon Hill, have shifted back towards Harwich some, so that Harwich sees, before we even talk about an increase in the budget itself, the minimum required contribution that the town is supposed to come up with based on the wealth factors of the town needs to come up with another $164,000 towards educating the students, and the town of Chatham needs to come up with another $63,000. And then, these get sort of put into the calculation for an assessment. So the assessment calculation looks at the total budget number up top, that $38,115,065, and takes from that funds that come in to offset the budget, state aid, the excess and deficiency, we're using the $333,000 there, charter school reimbursement, Medicaid interest that the district gets from its accounts, just miscellaneous revenues. It could be everything from gate receipts to this, that, and the other. That shrinks that total amount down. Then you have transportation costs get calculated, the capital plan that those slides that we're talking about, the capital technology funds, and then debt. So the bulk of that debt that the district has is the interest on the debt for building the high school. So you come up with a total operating assessment. This gets split out between the two towns. So you have the minimum required contribution up there. You have the percentages based on the number of students from Harwich and Chatham that are part of your foundation enrollment that go into that assessment for the operating assessment per member. There's a slight difference in how transportation gets calculated. It's by students from each town in the seats as opposed to the foundation enrollment for that one. The final punchline here is that the total assessment for the town of Harwich is a $24,787,671 assessment. Chatham's assessment would be a $8,951,215 assessment. Chatham's assessment, if we look at the operations, transportation, and capital, is going up at 4.21%. Harwich's is going up at 3.58%. The reason those two are slightly different from each other is the minimum required contribution for Chatham has gone up just a little bit more than Harwich's, and there's been a slight shift in the number of students in the school district from Chatham, so that's caused Chatham's number to tick up just a little bit more. That's why the two percentages for the two towns are different. And then the towns also, if you look at the cost of the school district, if you include debt in that, the total cost to educate students for Harwich is going up by 3.03%, and for Chatham, 3.69%. So just in terms of budget timelines, we have next week is the school vacation week, but we are going to be going to the Chatham Finance Committee meeting on Wednesday, February 22nd at 2 p.m. in the afternoon in the annex to not give a presentation to them, but they have our budget presentation just to go hear, answer questions they have from Harwich on February 23rd, which is a Thursday. We're going to be at the town hall in the library to speak with the Harwich Finance Committee and answer their questions. I know there's some concern. I think there's someone on the Harwich Finance Committee that have raised a question on whether or not the school district should use more excess and deficiency and not have a debt exclusion in Harwich. And I think that's a conversation that we can have, and then based on that, bring it back and discuss it further here in public meeting.
Thank you. Any questions, discussions? Mr. Carpenter, the Harwich selectmen voted on Monday night.
They did, to support the town manager's budget, which has these numbers in it and carries that and has the capital as a debt exclusion, one-year debt exclusion for the town.
And do you know what the vote count was for that?
I believe, if I'm correct, that all of the selectmen favor that.
Great, that's great, good news. Anybody else, any questions about the budget? We've had it presented to us a couple of times. It's not much different from the last presentation. Public to think that we haven't been paying attention. So, if no questions, okay. Ms. Ryder,
Can I ask some questions on this?
on the budget.
Anything in there?
Anything on the budget?
So, yeah. So looking at page 2 of this more, actually it's page 1, it's more detailed budget. And the, we've got more on page 1. Oh, then the page 1 that comes from your budget software. The medical therapy services, which is decreased by over $10,000 near the bottom of the page, 2320.
Ms. Azarnio would like to respond to that.
Katie Isernio, Business Manager. In Melissa's presentation, she indicated that in conversations with some of the special education staff, it made more sense to centralize one of those budget lines. And you'll see if you go to later on in the budget, which would be in the district, which would, after the 1,000, then it would be the 30s. There'll be an increase in the medical therapeutic contracted services, because we're budgeting more centrally, and then as the need arises in each building, the monies will be allocated to the building as the need comes up, rather than at the beginning of the year, budgeting by location. So it's centralizing them a little bit more.
Page number?
Let me find
Roughly.
it. I would say it's probably about 30-ish,
Okay. Centralized.
31 maybe.
Okay.
And one of the things I'd like to just, everything's a teachable moment, and as you know, I always talk to you about this long string of numbers. So if you look at the long string of numbers in our account code, the second to last group, it's either 001, 002, or 005. Anything that's 002 is special education. Anything that's 001 is the general fund, and 005 is undistributed. That's our things such as health insurance or utility bills, etc. So if you want to hone in a little bit more, as I said, the second to last group, 002, is special ed.
We don't have a 3 or a 4?
No.
See that
So
new math.
did you see an increase in the medical therapeutic in the district at that? Were you able to locate that, Karen?
Not specifically, but I don't have to.
Okay.
Page 31, I think.
But
And in 2320.
Yeah, so if you
I
look
got
on
it.
page
I got it.
30, yes, on page 31, there's a significant increase in that because we centralized the budgeting of that piece. So most times, we had a similar question, which was nice when we were in Chatham. One of the Board of Selectmen noticed a swing in a teaching assistant line, and we could show them where there was a decrease in one building because a child was going to be moving next year, so the TA was going to be increasing at the next school. So there's usually a yin and a yang in the budget.
Okay.
Before you
Might as
go,
well stay there.
Okay.
Okay, substitutes. As an example,
same page, right, page 2.
the next one, yeah, 2. That was 1. This is 2. It seems that, first of all, the actual amounts are higher than what is budgeted for 18. And I've noticed that in the past couple of years, we tend to have to move from other cost centers to cover the substitute that hasn't been budgeted highly enough. Why is this lower? And we've had to do that the last couple of years.
Well, we had some conversations, and we were looking at if at this point, any long-term sub needs that we were anticipating, and we didn't see the same number that we were anticipating in the past. So that is a budget driver if somebody is going to be having a baby or going to be out on maternity leaves. But it's always, yeah, that's one of those places that it's.
In 10 years on the school committee, we've every single year had to increase
Right.
the sub. Just if you would budget it to the level that it could potentially get to, it can falsify the number.
Yeah,
Because-
we're looking at this, the last 3 years, and it's budgeted lower, and you're just backing up what I've said, that we've had to, transfer money into that cost center every year. Why would we potentially want to be transferring more because this is a lower number?
As in any business, you have things that, it's the place to cut. And for us, I mean, it's easier to say that the electric bill went down and be able to fund that than have the electric bill not go down and the electric number is way out of whack.
This isn't electric then. Okay, another question. 2340, same page. The budget's almost doubled, or more than doubled, actually.
I'm on page 6.
2. Still 2.
Okay. I'm sorry, where are we?
2340. Library and Media Center. That,
We had a person that it was a .5, and it was the person at a split position, it was .5 between 2 different cost centers, and it was just budgeted under this one cost center this year, in 18. It was .5 library, .5 technology, and that was just an adjustment that we made this year. In that 18 that we budgeted under library media.
okay, it just seemed to imply a shift in staffing levels.
It's just a shift in allocation of the budget number.
So there's a respective cut somewhere else.
Right, it's decrease, yes.
In psychological services, 2,800, I'm assuming that also was centralized.
That's exactly right. It's pretty much if you look in the,
So I'm going to see
in the
that.
contracted services, yes, you'll see that throughout. So, and then if you just skip, again, scroll to the second to last grouping, the 002 special ed, and that will speak to the presentation that Melissa just gave. It'll tie to those numbers.
Does that include the small group specialist in 001 on page 6? Oh, sorry, that went the other way. That actually increased by a bit.
Which line? It's page 6.
Top.
I can't, off the top of my head, I can't answer that one off the top of my head, because that's regular ed, because that's 001.
Right.
But there's a reason, and I will tell you that reason, but off the top of my head, I can't give it to you right now.
Okay.
I'll look in the budget notes, and we can talk about it at the next session.
Okay. Yeah, I also noticed substitutes, same thing for that.
Right.
for Harwich Elementary, it's a lot lower than actuals for the prior couple of years. Psychological services, that's the same thing. Same thing. Okay, most of my questions actually are answered by the fact that you've centralized it.
Okay.
So that's it for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well, that seems to be the conclusion of our public hearing regarding the fiscal 2018 budget. The only other thing that I'm aware of that we have to accomplish tonight is scheduling our next meeting. We obviously have a meeting scheduled for March. However, we need to schedule a meeting before then to cover the topics that we thought we were going to be covering during a regular business meeting tonight. So, if everyone would look at their calendars for next Wednesday. I know that certain people will be wisely out of state, given that it's school vacation week. Would have been there myself. Next year. Miss Scott is out. I see Miss Scott definitely out.
When are you thinking? Because
Wednesday.
Wednesday, the 22nd?
Right.
I have 12 or 1 I could meet, but I have for an hour. But all the rest of the time's completely booked already.
I'm talking about the evening.
All the evening's booked till 8 already.
Till
I
8?
still wanted to start. That's when I worked out. I could do it.
It's a Wednesday.
I know. The problem with Thursday is that we'll be, some of us, 2 of us at least, will be meeting with the Harwich Finance Committee during when we would normally be meeting.
Could we do it at a different time Thursday than that meeting was? What time is that meeting?
It starts at
6:30.
6:30. I hope to be out of there by 7:30, but.
Yeah. We'd have to start very late, and it's a fairly long agenda. We actually covered special ed would have been on the next meeting, was handled tonight, but other than that, it's a pretty large agenda.
That's when the selectmen meeting?
No, the Harwich Finance Committee has asked members of the school committee to attend their meeting so they can ask us questions about the budget or make comments about the budget. So we need to try to find that. We may have to just do the best we can.
Could we not schedule it after our next meeting? And just do what we do, just move the agenda forward?
There is
I think our next
another
one's
week
March
in
9th.
between. We don't have a meeting.
No, it's March 1st, isn't it? Oh, the second,
It's
yeah.
first or second, I
It's the
think.
second.
The second.
March 2nd. Anybody have a problem with March 2nd? And then again on March 9th? Mr. Carpenter has a concern.
I'm not here.
I will not be here on the 2nd. I'm out of state.
And I am not in the state either.
You're welcome to be
without me.
I'll not be in state either.
Well, that would shorten.
You're
the
funny.
meeting. What about March 1st?
Won't be here.
No.
I'll be in the air.
You won't be here for the week?
No, I'm here 27th, 28th. And then around noon, I have to fly out. We also have on the 27th, I believe, there's a request to, by the Harwich Selectmen to have you go to talk regional agreement with them tentatively.
Yeah, which is one reason I wanted to schedule a school committee meeting before then. Nancy, Ms. Scott, you'll be out for the week, right? Anybody else out for all of next week?
Which week?
The next week. The week starts on the 20th.
Yeah, I'm not here the whole week.
You're not here the whole week.
I'm here all week. So excited to be home
Did I
with
already
my
ask about the
kids.
28th?
Not here.
I'm gone. The 22nd looks great.
Yeah, well, as of right now, every night I've selected, there's at least 2 people who aren't going to be available.
What was?
Was it 21st?
Second? There were 2 people not available.
Nancy Scott, will be- you and, well, for next week, you two are both gone, and Sharon's not available either.
21st?
On the 22nd,
No, on the 2nd of
Oh,
March.
second.
Who was not available on the 2nd?
the superintendent
And me.
That's the only person, right? Oh.
And me.
and Jackie, Ms. Long.
What about Monday, the beginning of the week, the
The 21st?
27th or 28th? I'm not here the 27th, but I'm okay if you can mute
I'm not here the 27th either.
That's a select.
You what?
I'm not here the
Oh,
27th.
right, that was your selectmen's meeting, sorry.
We could
Oh,
push
yeah,
that
yeah.
back, though.
So, I don't want to be dense, but maybe I am on this. On the 23rd, we've got one period of time when you're meeting with the finance committee.
Yeah.
But we could get some things done before that, maybe, or after that, or something.
No, you don't want to ask people to leave work in the middle of the day.
But that's what you ask me all the time when I come to these meetings, so.
But you're not available on the 23rd, except at lunchtime, right?
That's right.
Well, you know, some of what we're doing is having strategic plan reports. I mean, there's things that we really need to move forward with. So we're gonna have to schedule a meeting and hope that we have a quorum and take a chance, because we gotta keep this thing going. So, what night on the week of the 27th are the least number of people not here?
Why don't you start with Monday?
Start with Monday,
There was like 3 of us not here on
Who
Monday.
cannot be here Monday?
I cannot.
Monday the
Right, that would
27th,
still be a quorum.
right?
Who could not be here Tuesday?
Thank you. 3 of us?
Switch. Wednesday?
Not sure.
So there is a quorum availability on Monday and Tuesday, it appears.
What about Thursday?
What about Thursday? Who's not here on Thursday?
The 2nd, just me, I think.
Thursday the 2nd?
Yeah.
You?
And Mr. Carpenter.
And Mr.
Oh,
Carpenter.
and Mr. Carpenter.
Are there things on the agenda that can be done without Scott or?
Sure, yeah.
Like what?
That's what we have Melissa for.
I mean, we could always, if there's something that needs to have Scott's attendance, could we not put it off till the 9th?
So we,
I can't hear what anybody's saying.
Sorry,
so-
I'm sorry.
We're trying to hide it from you. Embarrassing.
Sorry.
I guess.
We just
my-
scheduled the meeting, you didn't hear it?
My only concern about not fitting a meeting in next week is, I think the high school is ready to launch on a power hour that they've come up with I think a proposal that I think makes sense. I think they're ready to go, but they don't want to launch until they bring it here before this body, and I think they were sort of planning to launch after the vacation, and so we're kind of gumming up the works a little bit too. So, I think if we can squeeze one in next week, it would help that move forward. I know this evening, Mark Wilson is making a presentation at the middle school talking about how we're using the map testing and sharing with parents how that information, how to interpret that information. Mark was going to come here and share with you how we're using this data to inform parents and inform students and inform teachers, and I think Robin was going to dovetail with them on it. So there's a lot of different things, so Mr. Richardson.
I just think there are other issues that need to be settled soon.
Right. Right. Ms. Stout.
I think that the power hour, because it's taking away time from academics, not that I'm not in support of that. And the global, and for me, I cannot support any of this, even though in general I do, until we make sure we have government. And so if there's something taken away, so what I'm saying is, one thing hits another, so I don't think, well, maybe we need to have all those things in one meeting instead of doing one thing that is, affects other things.
How many people are going to be gone on vacation next week?
Aren't?
Are on vacation next week. 2, right?
Maybe Monday or Tuesday night of next week.
What about Monday? Yeah. Yeah. How about Tuesday, the 21st, for those who are not, who is not available other than Nancy and Karen on the 21st?
I work till 8.
You work till 8.
I'm off, Kate, but I could
What
be a
happened,
little late.
what happened with the 22nd? I forgot what happened with the 22nd once
She works
I work
late.
till 8,
There would still be
on the
5
21st and the
members.
22nd?
but not the 20th.
How many can make it on the 22nd? Excluding,
I can't.
on the 22nd of February, other than Sharon's work schedule, how many could make it on the 22nd in the evening?
It would be 5.
I would like you not to take up that power hour when I'm not here, because I feel very strongly about some connections to that.
Remind me what happened with the 23rd?
Selectmen or FinCom.
Oh, yeah.
We could do some things on the 23rd.
You weren't available in the evening.
On the 23rd? I could be on the 23rd, but not the 22nd. On Thursday.
Thursday, the 23rd, 5 o'clock.
I'd be late.
People have lives?
You're not allowed to have a life.
How late?
How late?
What time did you get here?
Okay,
I could be here like 5:45. I mean, quarter of 6.
Is the Harwich Finance Committee's meeting at 6:30?
It's at 6:30.
They only meet, is that their,
Is that their, yeah, that was gonna be my
It's just-
question.
It's just us, I believe.
Oh, it's not like you could be at the end of their agenda.
I think that's the beginning of their agenda, 6:30.
they led you to believe that their agenda for that night is us at 6:30?
That we are the agenda.
So what about 7?
I was gonna say, maybe you could ask them to
We'll talk
push
fast.
back a little.
7 o'clock.
Oh, meet here at 7.
Yeah.
I would do my.
What day?
7 o'clock on the 23rd.
Who's
You'll
on
be back.
first?
Thursday, February 23rd.
What's on second?
Well, I just
Thursday.
The 23rd.
Good point. So 23rd, 7 o'clock, done.
Here.
Here.
7 o'clock.
Maybe we get the Irish Finance Committee to come here at 6:30. It's close enough. It's across the street. When do they meet? I think they meet across the street. We'll work on that. 7 o'clock, next meeting. Anything else before we adjourn?
Hope nobody's sick. Hope no one's sick.
You have one give.
All right, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. We will adjourn. 7:50.
That was good. But my battery, which was 1%, lasted that entire conversation.